So this season, as part of my role at Battletown Football Club as chaplain, I've practically been supporting the first team. So I've been based with the first team, travelling, whether it's at their kind of home games or away matches, and I actually really wanted to get alongside the manager particularly and offer some practical support, which doesn't involve any kind of tactics or guidance in that way, shape or form, because I have none to offer. But I am able to make sure that the water bottles are there and that sort of thing. It's interesting, though, that so like the players, I therefore arrive an hour to an hour and a half ahead of the kickoff. And watching them, as I did yesterday, they turn up and they look like a real mixed bunch, really. You've got some who are in the BTFC tracksuits, and look together. You've got some who maybe come directly from work. So, and one guy I think he's in the building trade, so he literally comes kind of in his overalls. That's what he appears. Others are in kind of shorts and kind of sliders, and just kind of almost like loungewear sort of thing. It's a real mix as they head into the changing room. The thing is, when they exit the changing room and head out to the pitch, there's been this transformation. Because suddenly they're all wearing matching socks, shorts, shirts. They've got their boots on. And they exit as a team looking much more united than they did when they entered. They are suited and booted, if you will, for the task that is ahead. Now, currently on Sundays in our talks, we're exploring, as you've heard, something called the armour of God. And these are the tools that God has given us through which we can be spiritually victorious. We're encouraged to put on the full armour of God that we might stand against the schemes of the enemy, of the devil, who just is seeking to undermine and distract and pull us off course at every opportunity that he has. So just kind of reiterating really where we started in this series, it's essential that we put it on. It's very different to the footballers' kit, mind you, because their kit offers them no protection physically out on the pitch. If you've ever watched football, certainly grassroots, there's all sorts of rough and tumble and injuries and that sort of thing. But actually, when we think about the armour of God, it's not just something nice for us to reflect on. We need to actually be putting it on. And part of what we're going to do as the kind of series concludes in the next few weeks is actually think through what are some of those prompts or some of those practices, some of those things that we can do that will help us both remember that we have this armour, but also to actually put it on in terms of the different situations that we face day in, day out, and week by week. 2 weeks ago, just as a quick recap, we looked at the belt of truth. Shirley explored that with us last week. Emma helped us reflect on the breastplate of righteousness. So it's probably no surprise to you that we're moving on to the third part of the armour today. And we find it detailed in Ephesians, which is one of the letters in the New Testament. I'm going to read from Ephesians chapter 6, just again recapping from verse 10 to verse 15. If you've got a Bible, then please do open it and follow along. If not, just listen as we just hear these words from Paul written to this church in Ephesus, but also for us to hear afresh today. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armour of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armour of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. Stand firm with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. Quick history lesson for you here. The imagery, Paul, who wrote Ephesians, the imagery he uses, it comes from the Roman soldiers that he would have seen around him. They would have worn these kind of sandals that had these studs underneath, which would have given them both firmness in their grip, but also real mobility in battle. They weren't clunky, they wouldn't have held them down. They would have been able to be agile, but they would also have had a firm grip wherever they were standing. And there is, in some respects, a bit of a paradox with this third piece of the armor, because it's almost a little contradictory of itself. Paul's saying to them, they, and thus we, are to be prepared to announce the gospel of peace as they engage in spiritual warfare. Peace, warfare. One commentator reflecting on this passage, he said, to establish the peace of God in the universe, which is our ultimate aim, we must do battle against the spiritual evil which disturbs that peace. It's remembering the fact that by following Jesus, by saying, yes, I want to be one of his disciples, that instantly draws us into a fight. It puts us in that reality. As Paul says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So I want to reflect on two elements that I think come out of this verse and this piece of armor as we think about what does it mean to put it on. Initially, I think it's recognizing that this peace enables us to stand firm. Throughout the passage here, as we reflected on that first week, Paul is saying them to stand firm. And this peace enables us to be able to do that. I was thinking about it this week, though. The opposite of peace, if you will, I don't know how we describe it. We might think of words like war or conflict, strife, trouble, unrest, upheaval, maybe fear. Maybe that's a big one that comes to mind for some of us in terms of the opposite of peace. The opposite of standing firm, well, I'd describe that as doing a runner in the opposite direction, getting as fast out of dodge as we can, sort of thing. Whereas here, Paul is asking us, he's saying, stand firm. Stand firm with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. Again, a reminder to us that this armor it's not saying here, well, just make sure you've got the latest fashionable product adorning your feet here, or make sure you look good alongside. No, this is functional, it's practical, and it's about being ready for what we're going to face. In John 14:27, Jesus says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. I wonder, though, whether sometimes we read a verse like that. Do we really hear the truth that is in it? Do we really believe that that is what Jesus does for us? The world around us seeks to offer us endless, kind of potential answers to the turmoils that we face in life. Things, solutions, remedies. The reality is, though, however great they might sound, however foolproof they might appear, however many kind of great reviews they've got on some website that obviously that means it's all right sort of thing, or it's endorsed by our kind of, our favoritist celebrity. Therefore, again, it's obviously going to be good sort of thing. None of the things the world offers us will suffice. But again, I wonder whether sometimes we forget that. And we all too easily look to the things around us rather than turning and receiving the peace that Jesus has made a reality for every single one of us. To use the imagery Paul has here, I suppose I want to ask, what is getting in the way of our feet being fitted with the gospel of peace? What is stopping us receiving the peace that Jesus offers? Emma was praying earlier, is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it worry about things that are to come, or uncertainties? Is it those past disappointments that we're allowing to live rent-free in our heads in present-day life? Jesus came to set us free. We need to step into that freedom. We need to receive that. There's a song by the Christian singer Ellie Limebear entitled By Fear. And it comes out of her own kind of personal experience of some of the things that, and she tells the story here in a just really kind of, the fear just consumed her, almost to the point that she wouldn't leave her house. In the song, she says, "Get out of my house. Your time is up. We're over now. I'm gladly show you to the door. Don't forget your stuff that's on the floor. There's no room for you anymore. I'm changing the locks. This is not your home anymore. No more waltzing in or sneaking through the back door. Bye. Not even see you later. Gone for good. So bye. This is forever. You are gone for good." That speaks of the truth that comes from what Jesus did on the cross. Not just some fairy story, not just something that some guy came up with one day because he needed something to say. No, the truth that we read in the Word of God, the truth of what happened all those years ago, set us free. But again, it's that question, what is stopping us maybe receiving the peace that Jesus offers us? What is stopping us? And if there's anything, then I would want to encourage us to ask Holy Spirit, would you move in us? Would you help us? Would you set us free so that we might be able to ensure our feet are fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace? That we might be able to stand firm as Paul encourages to. Second element of this verse that I want to briefly think on, when we think about putting on this armor, very much builds on that first. But it's asking that we might be ready and willing to share the gospel. That we might be ready and willing, to share the gospel. And again, it might seem very obvious, but following Jesus draws us into a fight. The battle is won, but the war rages on. And the enemy is going to continue to do everything that he can to knock us off our course and to stop us doing what we are here to do as followers of Jesus, as the church. The preacher John Stott, he said, the devil fears and hates the gospel because it has got power to rescue people from his tyranny, both us who have received it and those whom we share it. We need to keep our gospel boots strapped on. That we might be able to do just that. To share the good news of Jesus. Witness to his power. That rescues us from sin, from death, and a lost eternity. I was thinking about it this week, and I'm aware this may be a very simplistic way of putting it. But I believe every single one of us is going to live forever. The question is, where will we spend that eternity? And will we spend it with Jesus? And when we think about our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues, those we see in the world, where might they be at? And what's that opportunity that we have to seek to share the gospel of peace with them? There's a recording of a sermon by the famous preacher Martin Lloyd-Jones. And in it, he talks about ineffective Christian soldiers. He says this, he describes them as passengers being carried who are always a great hindrance to an army. They include those who are lethargic and have to be whipped up, those who follow routines thoughtlessly, those fighting the wrong battles or old battles, and those fighting other Christians instead of the enemy. Now, that might sound a bit harsh, really. We might kind of go, hold on a second, that's pushing this a little bit too much. But yet we read in John 10:10, the words of Jesus, it says, the thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Yeah, the enemy would love us sitting around, minding our own business, without a care for the world or anyone in the world. And we gather on a Sunday and we do our stuff, or at other times, and it's brilliant. But actually we just kind of, doing our thing because we like it and we want it to fit us and we want it to be the way that we like it because it will kind of meet our needs. Whereas actually, as disciples of Jesus, that's not what we're called to. We're not called to a comfortable life. We're not called to a consumer existence as the church. However much so often church life can turn into, what is it actually going to do for me? And what am I going to get out of this? You know, we're currently watching as a family the Celebrity Traitors TV show. And in the hallway at Ardross Castle, where it's set, there is an old suit of armour, really shiny, obviously, because it's on TV and that sort of thing. I mean, if you may have seen them, I'm sure, as you've visited some of these kind of National Trust or English heritage places, and they look amazing. The reality is, though, they're exhibition pieces. They're never there to kind of be picked up really and used. I mean, we go to a place down in Cornwall we visited where they allow you to hold the sword, but you've got to put on white gloves and you've got this adult standing around you, obviously protecting probably people near you more than you sort of thing. The reality is, if you ever see one of those suits of armour, they're designed just to be an exhibition. And even if you do see, like they had down at Battle Abbey, reenactments, you're not actually watching a real battle. Because the people with the swords aren't trying to kill the people on the other side of the field. They're trying to put on a show. They're trying to demonstrate what it was like. And so I wonder whether sometimes that's how we actually view the armour of God. We see it as a bit of an exhibition piece. Something that, well, we're not really meant to put on, are we? We're not really actually meant to take this too seriously. I mean, the language is a bit weird and it doesn't really relate to us. And obviously it was written to a church a long time ago. Whereas actually this is a truth that every single one of us needs to hear. And I need to actually work through, so what does this look like for me in my life? What does this look like and how am I going to prepare myself for whatever I'm going to face? If you were here last Sunday, we sang a song called Keep the Banner Flying High, and it has the words in it that says, light a fire in my bones that an ocean cannot drown. Give me hope, give me strength until my work is done. And I've had that kind of going round in my head most of the week. We sang it actually Sunday evening, and we also actually sung it on Monday at the Elders and Deacons meeting. And actually, I think it's a really dangerous song to sing. Next time we sing it, I mean, with a lot of the songs we sing, I think actually we need to think what we are singing sometimes. Because God might actually take us at our word. And he might actually light a fire in you that suddenly stirs you so you can no longer just sit comfortably. And suddenly we're pushed out of our comfort zones and we find ourselves in places where we're not quite sure whether we really want to be here, but it's where God's leading us because we actually said, would you light a fire in us, God? He's gone, okay, I will. You know, and suddenly we find ourselves at our workplaces where people are asking us questions and we're encountering people and there's those opportunities before us. And it's in those times when we need to ensure that we have the armour on, that our feet are fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace, that we might share it. And in all of this, we need to remember that Paul is writing about us being ready. Our feet fitted with the readiness. You know, we need to be constantly prepared because the enemy is always active and the attacks are unexpected. With this, I'm going to draw things to a close. But my guess is most of you will have seen, if not seen one of these, you will have had one of these when you were growing up. This is a 1988 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle van, which I'm guessing most of you might be thinking, I've never had one. I can't think why you'd want one. And surely at 43 years, Ed, what led you to acquire one? If that's you, then just as an aside, feel free to talk to Emma afterwards. You can console her. Her grace and acceptance is something beautiful. Seriously, though, I'm pretty certain that most of you will have either had one of these or you will have certainly played with one or seen one up close at some point in your lives. Because it's not actually about kind of the van that's important here. It's what's inside. Because as you pull it back, there is a spring that is coiling up, that is getting tighter, so that when I let it go, it moves forward. Now, I'm aware that if this was the turtle van, Shredder would have defeated them because they don't move that fast. But you get my point. It's that idea of actually being ready. That's what Paul is saying here. He's saying, don't just be in the garrison, kind of having a cup of tea, looking after yourself. No, you need to be ready. You need to be like that coiled spring that at a moment's notice, when you let go of it, you are there and you are off. That's what we need to be as disciples. You know, I needed to be ready this week when the shop assistant I was talking to turned to me and said, "Oh, you're the vicar, aren't you?" I need to be ready in that moment to think, how am I going to respond? Am I going to fob it off? Am I going to be awkward? Or am I going to actually see this as an opportunity? God, where are you going to take it? I need to be ready when one of the footballers asked me, "Well, what do you actually do in your role, Ed?" Again, I needed to, in that split second, decide, well, am I just going to kind of try and be cool and I'm a bit awkward, or am I actually going to take this as an opportunity to share something of why I do what I do as I talk about my role? I needed to be ready when the guy who I've been supporting over the last few months turned to me and he said, "So what are you doing this weekend, Ed?" I needed to be ready to actually talk about what I was doing this morning, rather than talk about all the other bits and pieces and the fact that we're going to watch a movie or have a pizza or that. Actually, to be ready to respond. Just because I'm a pastor or a minister doesn't mean it's any easier in those moments. You know, I needed to be ready when my neighbour who was working on his car started chatting to me over the fence. I needed to be ready for what God was going to prompt me to in that moment. Are we ready to share the gospel of peace this week? Are we standing firm with our feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace, that we might be propelled into all that God has for us, that we might be ready to stand, ready to share as he is going to guide us and support us and equip us and enable us, that we might bring glory to his name. Amen.